Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Smile. I am so excited for today's episode because joining me here in the studio, I have the beautiful Niki Kiskiras. Now, Nikki is a commercial and sales lead for a global beauty company, and she is also a fitness instructor at Barry's Boot Camp. And aside from both of those amazing credentials, she's also a beautiful friend of mine. Now, I don't often get the privilege of having really close friends in the studio. I think it's quite daunting to come onto a show like this. So before we go any further, Nikki, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. We've been talking about this for a little while now. I think the first time I approached Nikki about this was probably 18 months ago. So I'm really, really excited to have this conversation today. I'm also going a little bit rogue in that I haven't planned too many questions because normally I don't know a whole lot about my guest, but I know a lot about you. So I feel like I want this conversation today to be really organic, and I really want it to be authentic so that people can really understand your story. And I think that so many people who listen along are going to relate to so much of it. So without any further delay, Nikki, welcome to Behind the Smile. How are you, honey?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. How are you feeling?
Look, I'm not going to lie. I was a little nervous.
Yeah.
But it was nice to have a quick little chat before. And now the nerves are good. We're in a good place. And I'm actually really in an open place.
Great.
It's been a few years since I guess what we're about to talk about, about 8 years. So there's been a lot of time to kind of digest, do a bit of work on myself, and a lot of experiences that have kind of brought me to this place of being vulnerable, open, and I'm sure there is someone out there that is going to really resonate.
Oh, I have no doubt. We were chatting before we hit record, and I was saying to Nikki that I believe Nikki really epitomizes the concept of this show, which is hiding behind a smile and having a big, beautiful smile and presenting to the world that you have it all together, but having a bit of a story. I mean, I think every single one of us carries a story, right? But yours is one that has, being a friend of yours for a number of years now, I'm watching you grow and evolve. It's been really inspiring. So that's why I wanted to get you in to share that today. So let's kick it off with a couple of questions to allow the audience to get to know you a little bit better. Can we start with, where do you live? What does an average day look like? And what do you do for fun?
So I live in Malvern, kind of close to like High Street Armadale. Also challenging. We have the best shops on the street. Look, my average day will be, getting up at about 4:45 in the morning. I'll teach or jump in a Barry's Boot Camp class, and then I'll hit the 9 to 5 job. Yep, on St Kilda Road in Melbourne. And then after work, sometimes it's either, family catch up or catch up with a girlfriend. I'm definitely one to be known to always be on the go. So yeah, that would be the average day in my life.
Yeah, it's certainly not for the faint-hearted what Nikki's schedule looks like on a day-to-day basis. And tell me, where do you find time for fun in all of that, and what does that look like?
I mean, fun for me could be after work, weekends. It's always definitely after I've done some sort of work. So even though, Barry's for me is fun.
I see how much fun you have.
So much fun. So once I've done something like that, or my 9 to 5, kind of after work is my downtime. And I say that now because I've been able to find that balance. There were many, many moons ago where, work, and you will know this as well, times have kind of changed, especially post-COVID, that I've been able to build a work-life balance. So, connecting with my friends, always over movement or food. I'm a huge foodie. Or travel. I'm definitely one, to be known to get on a plane multiple times in the year, and it's always to, either chase the sun, jump on an active retreat, and just something where it involves meeting new people and something challenging as well. Yeah, that for me is fun, like always on the go.
And has that always been a part of your personality, this love for fitness and travel and that just open-minded, almost childlike wonder to the world?
Look, when I was a child, we would have family holidays. For about 10 years, my parents were very, very hardworking, and we had one holiday a year at Hamilton Island for 2 weeks. And that was kind of all I knew up until I was about 12, 13. It really wasn't until I was getting ready to get married that I really found that, I guess, zest for travel. Maybe particularly because my partner was from France, and there were a couple of life events in the lead up, I guess, to finishing school and then after school that kind of stopped me from being able to do that. You know, when my parents separated, I was 17. That was the first time I'd actually gone overseas. We lived in Athens for a year.
Wow.
Yeah, I went to an international school, an amazing experience.
That must have been hard though I was 17 when my parents split, and I remember that being really confusing.
Yeah, it was. But it just made sense to kind of come back after the year to Australia. So Mum brought us back. Dad had a great opportunity over there. So Dad stayed. We came back with Mum. We finished school, high school. And I guess that kind of opened my eyes up to travel. But then shortly after that, when I turned 21, Mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. But amazing now. She's, it's kind of like it never happened. And she's very, very lucky. But all those life moments, kind of the start, the stop, the start, the stop, it's like I got little tastes of it, but not a full feeling for it. And it wasn't until, I guess, everyone was well again. My dad remarried and, had a beautiful son who's my half brother. I don't even like to say half. He's
your brother.
He's my brother. And I guess in the lead up to then my wedding and having it abroad, because both of our families are from Europe, that kind of opened up that zest for travel. And then also the fitness side of things. I mean, I was always into fitness as a child, but not the kind of fitness that I'm into today. So it was the kind of fitness that your parents think that you might be into, and I happened to be good at it. I was in all the swimming squad teams up until about 12 years old, and Dad thought I'd be the next Kieran Perkin. And I'm like, my coach said, look, she's a tiny one. Yeah. So
she's a little tadpole.
She's a little tadpole. And I did so well. I even went up to zone, all the way to zone level. But then after that, my body kind of, it wasn't really going to be a possibility for me. And I enjoyed dancing in school. But then it really wasn't until, I guess, the family unit was, challenged a little bit, that all those things, there was so much going on at such a young age that the things that I was loving to do physically, for some reason, were less in my peripheral. And then this hardworking level up person, like I grew up really quickly. I already was, working at 14 and 9 months in retail. I really wanted to, contribute to myself, and I started this independent kind of life. So whilst that kind of happened when I was young, it kind of fizzled out a little bit. And then it wasn't until I was getting wedding ready, and of course every bride knows this, doesn't matter what shape or size you are, you just want to look your best, whether it's toned or, if you want to add on a few kgs or lose a few kgs, whatever it is, that's your time where movement is a big part of your life. But for me, it kind of, reignited this fire in me, and I realized I had more of a passion and an interest and this, behind the science of fitness, not just what it has on the body, but for me, it was such a mental release. And then I was just hooked and addicted. And it kind of all started happening, about 6 months before I got married.
Yeah. So let's go there then, because it ties in really well to the photo that you've brought in today. So Nikki, I've asked you to bring in a photo from a time in your life where you are hiding behind a smile. So you were presenting one version of yourself to everyone around you, but the reality was your internals felt very different to what your externals looked like. So we're going to bring that photo up on the screen now, but for those who are listening along, could you please describe what I'm looking at here in this photo and what was actually going on for you in that moment in your life?
Well, you'll see a very, very young, baby-faced, beautiful bride, definitely having a great time. Let's not take away from that. anyone that came to that event will tell you it was one of the most incredible events to attend.
It looked amazing.
It was just, a beautiful moment of friends and family joining. And for me, a couple of months, days, weeks before, hours, even before that day, there was a lot of uncertainty that I was not living an authentic life in terms of I felt like I had so much more to do, to see, to learn on my own. And I was so grateful because my family invested so much in this event. My family and my friends, my colleagues invested so much to travel to this event because it was held in Greece that I was so scared to pull the pin. And to be honest, that I couldn't even tell you right then and there if I 100% knew, even if pulling the pin was the right thing to do. I was just in this moment of like, you've just got to push through, like you've done in a lot of parts of your life. You got to push through, the trauma that comes with seeing your parents separate. You've got to push through, the trauma of seeing a parent unwell. You've got to push through, when you, might be, I don't know, challenged in, study, whatever it was. I just learned, and I was always brought up in a home of very tough, hardworking people. And the type of upbringing I had it was very, very generous. It was a very good upbringing. I don't want to take away from that. But I, living as a Greek Australian, and I say Greek first before Australian, even though I'm first generation on my mum's side Australian, second on my dad's, because in the home I lived a very Greek upbringing. We spoke Greek in the home. My grandparents didn't speak much English. My mum came to Australia when she was 6. My dad was born here. Family's everything, in a Greek culture. Food, we're tight, we're crazy and loud, but also the values, like there was so much emphasis put on we're working hard to send you to a private school. And my grandparents played such a role in looking after us so that my parents could go and work full time, and that the kind of life cycle or the I guess the road ahead is you go to a good school, you get into uni, you get a degree, you meet a really nice person, you get married, you buy a house, you have a baby. That is life. And not to take away that they wanted me to be successful in what I was doing, but I had done all of that pretty much by the age of 28 years old. And I'm 37 today, and I can tell you I did not know who Nikki was at 28. I know a lot of her now, but there's still more to know. So at 28 years old, I had all of this sitting on me, that I'd done everything, that also my parents, I was only 2 years older than my parents were when they got married, so like I was literally living the life of my mum and my dad. And don't get me wrong, I met the most incredible man, incredible. And I, look back on him with such respect and love, a different kind of love. But such a respect for him. He taught me so much about myself. And I'll never forget, when I did obviously have a conversation with him, we had many conversations, it felt like it happened quickly, but it also happened, for me internally quite slowly, that he said to me, once we'd signed our papers, and it was very civil. I have to be so grateful for that.
So are you talking about separating here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how long was that after the wedding?
So we separated a year, but then we waited another year for a full
To sign the divorce papers.
Correct. Yeah. We were together for 7, and married legally for 2. But I remember that kind of last thing that, he'd said to me was, you need to go and find yourself, and that's one thing that I can actually say, like, he really knew who he was and what he wanted. So I learnt so much from that, but it was definitely painful for both of us,
Of course. As, with such a similar experience in my own world, you can love someone and still let them go. You know,
Yeah.
it's not that the love's not there. It's just that you know deep down that you're not right for each other.
Yeah.
And it, you know, I'm so grateful for the fact that my separation was amicable, but it doesn't mean that it was any easier.
No.
And it was a very similar timeline, together for 7, married for 2. And yeah, nothing quite prepares you for, because we don't, as little girls, we don't think, I can't wait for the day I'm going to get divorced.
No.
It's just something that comes into the frame of mind, right? It's, I can't wait to get married. And then, as you shared, coming from that really traditional Greek background where it's all about family and hard work and getting married and having children, there must have been such an enormous pressure for you to play the part. I want to know, because for me, I remember thinking when I had ticked all of the boxes and I still felt empty inside, I thought that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. What did you think?
Oh, absolutely the same. And you can relate that to a lot of areas in your life. You know, you've been part of the corporate world and, you know, the rat race and, you know, constantly chasing and striving for success. What success looked like for me 10 years ago looks very different today. But that feeling of having achieved it, and I never even sat in it to really smell the roses, that I was already, you know, looking at the next, you know, goal, the next thing ahead, that, oh, once I, you know, get that promotion, I'll feel really good. Once I, you know, buy that new car, once I, you know, get the deposit, or once I, you know, whatever it is, it doesn't make me feel like it should make me feel, or what my perception is. So yeah, when I did get to that point, I remember when, you know, I was there on the day, I do, one thing I do know is when you are living an authentic life, it does feel differently when you slow down and take it in. But I was literally ticking boxes, I wasn't even really in the moment of planning a wedding. You know, I was like just mindlessly planning like I was any other event I was doing at work, and I do it so well, you know. And this is, I guess, part of the things that I'm working on at the moment, is that I'm able to do and manifest and, you know, conquer my professional goals. But when it comes to, you know, other life aspirations and goals like meeting someone and having a family, you can't look at it like a business project. You really cannot, you know. And I think that's what I've been learning over the last 8 years, is that, you know, not everything is like a tick box. Not everything is a spreadsheet, you know. It's just not. So, and also changing that mindset now in my corporate life has really changed. I've moved into another direction, another different part of the business, which is more authentic to who I am, you know, really focusing on my strengths as a vulnerable person that loves to build connections with people. So relationship management, client management, and it's something that I truly enjoy, but I was just shying away from it for so long. So that's what I mean by, like, now I feel authentic. I feel like I'm in the right space. Whereas when I was getting married, I just, honestly, it was just more a foreign feeling. And I remember I mentioned it to a few of my friends, you know, I'm not sure this is right, you know, and I was freaking the F out, like, just, you know, the shame, the embarrassment, how am I going to, you know, get through this? And I thought by opening up to my friends, you know, that they might be able to shed some form of light or some, you know, advice. And a lot of them, you know, which is, I probably would say the same thing at 28 years old to my 28-year-old friend. It's just wedding jitters.
The last thing someone's probably going to say is, have you considered cancelling?
Yeah, no. Also, that was very taboo back then too. You know, I was still brought up in a family where, you know, if you said, you know, go and see a psychologist, they'd be like, you know,
she's crazy.
Yes, that was what it was back then. Whereas today, I feel like, you know, this is why also I love the Americans, because I'll be like, I'm not answering that question unless I've spoken to my therapist. You know what I mean? So I think today it's almost looked upon like you should have that, you know?
Yeah, like we should all have a team.
We should all have a team.
You know, it's not just for athletes. You know, it's like everyone should have a team.
100%, you know, like you have your friends, you have your family, but, you know, you have someone a little bit outside of your circle, someone that's going to hold space for you, that you're not emotionally, dumping on somebody, So these are a lot of the things that I've learned, I guess, in these 8 years. But, looking back at my friends at the time, like I have a lot of empathy for them as well, because, imagine watching me go through this, like, this girl was like the good Greek girl, like I didn't really live a childhood where I was like a naughty girl. How do I say that in a nice way? Like, you know what I mean? Like I was like the one that would like be the driver that wouldn't drink. I would watch out for my friends. And I was also, that pressure was put on me from my friend, my family, and even their families, their parents being like, look after them, you're the oldest. So, I lived a very G-rated life up until, like early 20s. And it wasn't really until, after 28, I'm not saying I lived an R-rated life after that, but, I really got to like experience certain things that you probably would experience in your 20s, and that's where things like travel came in. That's when things like, dating came in. I mean, before my husband, I only had one other boyfriend. Yeah. So, I was in a relationship for 15 years with, two great guys and great experiences. But, I just had not lived, to be honest. And I kind of, fit in what I should. And to be honest, actually in 8 years, I've kind of done it just in the reverse of travel, dating, I don't know, doing wild things as well. Like
you've started an entire new career while still having
a career. I have 2 careers.
Yeah. It's, I mean, you really have done a lot. And a lot of that stuff that you're describing there, they act as the vehicle to finding oneself. So it makes perfect sense that you got to 28 years of age and had no idea who Nikki was. Can I ask, when you came to that decision that you needed to end the marriage, what was your biggest fear in doing that?
Shame, embarrassment. But before me, I was really worried about my family, because, and a lot of ethnic backgrounds will understand, it's like, oh, what will so-and-so's mum say? What will they say? Oh my God, no one wants to like kind of lift up the rug, but everyone has shit. Like that's the one thing that I've realized. There is not one person that doesn't have, something going on or someone in the family or, and a lot of people I'm meeting now later in life, they're making me feel so comfortable with it. Like the more and more we're open about it, the less taboo we are about, oh, we're a perfect family. And no, absolutely no one is. And it would worry me if you said you were, you know what I mean? You can be a tight family and super close, but don't tell me that, you don't argue or you don't agree with, what so-and-so does or, like there can still be love and respect, but, I still grew up around me with people very much hiding their challenges. And I feel like maybe, just maybe, things like therapy and opening up to your family and your friends about the struggles, maybe my parents or some parents that they would have made it through. I don't know, So
how do you do it, Nikki? Because what you've shared with me then is that there's been multiple instances in your life where you have felt this fear of what is everyone else going to think, the fear of shame, the fear of guilt. I mean, you and I were chatting about this before we started recording today, those fears that come up and what are people going to say and think about me, but you choose to do it anyway, and that's the difference, and that's why I think you have achieved so much success in your life. What makes you able to step into that fear? Because there'd be so many people listening along today who resonate with that fear, but the difference is they allow that to stop them from taking the action. And so they stay where they are year upon year, in misery and despair and not living the life that they're destined to live. How do you
just do it?
Yeah.
It's such an interesting question. I think it probably comes from that I'm very goal orientated and ambitious, but I always think like, one day I'm going to be 100. I'm going to be lying on my bed, tired and ready to go, I'm going to be looking fabulous. I've worked in beauty for so long that I'm like, I know I'm just going to, when time comes, she's going to go great, like looking schmick. But I know I'm never going to say, oh, I'm glad I didn't do that.
Yeah. Or I wish I had.
I wish I had. Like, you know, there are so many experiences that I'm looking back on. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to tell my grandchildren this story of, you know, me being in Italy and this experience happened, or, you know, being a fitness instructor. And look, I was ready for it. Like, I was ready for people to be like, what is she doing? You know, like, and I remember it started with dance fitness actually, reigniting this, you know, straight after I was engaged. Yeah, getting body ready. And like I remember actually an amazing manager of mine said to me at work, you better have time for your real job. And I was like, okay. And I think for me, I just thought, you know what, you're young enough now. You've still got time to make a few side steps, a few mistakes, a few errors. Like, just go with it. You know, you're doing a good job at work, and no news is good news. You'll only get a tap at the door, you know, in the corporate world sometimes if you're not doing a great job. It's rare that they have the time to stop and be like, actually, you know, great job, you know, like, so no news sometimes is good news. So I was like, you know, I'm just going to go with it and just see how it plays out. And I started, you know, building a little community. And it started with, you know, my friends, you know, they like really intrigued in what I was doing. And when they saw me perform, they're like, oh my God, like, we need more of this in our world. Like, you have a gift to connect with people, to tell a story, to make them laugh, you know. And I think that for me, actually, it feeds me more than the salary that I'm making in the corporate world. So I think you've got nothing to lose. So I think I'm shameless like that, but I don't know. I think that overpowers the feeling of shame. Does that sound?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And absolutely. And I think one thing I see you do is you set your eyes on something and you just go for it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the fitness a bit more, because I saw this evolution from Nikki corporate girl to Nikki fitness instructor. And I was observing, and, you know, we went through our separations at a really similar time. I was kind of still living in Sydney before I'd moved back to Melbourne, and we just started working together, and then we were on the same brand. So we got closer, and we were kind of we were going through the same life experience, but we were
It's
dealing with
sliding
that.
doors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we were dealing with it very differently. So, you know, 2018, I turned to my drinking really ramped up, and that's, you know, what eventually led me to the doors of rehab at the start of 2020. But you found fitness, and, you know, I saw it not only have such a profound impact on you physically, but mentally as well. And as a result of that, you and I started having conversations once I was along in my sobriety about, you know, you and many times have said to me, I'm taking a break from alcohol, and you've really started to put your health as a top priority. So can you talk to me a little bit more about how fitness has impacted that and your decision around alcohol? Like, I don't know where you are at the moment with if you're drinking or not and what it looks like, but I know it's been something that you've toyed with a lot. So I think that'd be really helpful for people listening along today who maybe don't have a problematic relationship with alcohol, but they know it's no longer serving them.
Yeah. I mean, look, to be honest, I've never enjoyed alcohol. So that's been a really easy decision, I would say. Like, if you say to me, I'll give up cake or give up, you know, bread, like, that's another story. Like, that would be a real commitment. You know, as a Greek, you know, I love my food. But fitness for me is an avenue to release, connect with myself, connect with others. And I want to feel in control at all times. I also want to be around for as long as I can. And I want to live a conscious life. You know, I don't want to, you know, the people that will say that they've gone drinking and, you know, perhaps they're like, I don't remember that. I can't have that. I want to remember everything all the bad, even all the bad, the good, whatever it is. I just love life so much. I live for the day, not for the night. I'm an early riser. And the feeling that fitness gives me is freedom. Freedom, because I didn't feel like I was free for so long. I broke free out of the, you know, who I was when I chose myself. And I think a lot of people may have thought that was a very selfish decision, A lot of people didn't understand it. I was trying to understand myself. So, I think I don't want to say broke hearts, but I think I was confusing a lot of my childhood friends who I have so much love for and so much empathy for in that time. But also I was growing into a completely new being, So for me, it's about the freedom it gives me. I feel like I'm connected to self, and I want to be around forever. I want to look 10 years younger at every stage of my life. I want to look good. I want to feel good. I think that's my answer to that.
Yeah. So you just mentioned friends then and having older friends, and I know you've got a lot of newer friends in the grand scheme of time, I guess, even though they probably feel like you're old friends now. How have your friendships evolved as Nikki has evolved these last 8 years?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of women in their 30s that will say this, but I really found my tribe at 30. I found my people at 30. It's probably a challenging thing to say as well, because if those people had have met me before, maybe they weren't my people back then. The people that I grew up with were my people at that time, and I think of life like a train. Like, some are going to be with you for your whole life, and then you might drop a couple off along the way, and then you might pick up a couple along the way, do a few more drop-ups, a few more pickups. Some might be there for the whole journey, and that's a really beautiful thing. The one thing that I can say that I'm truly grateful for is there is no resentment. Like, there is no and I truly believe on both sides. Like, I see we're still connected on social media. A lot of them have married and had beautiful babies, and I look on with so much like happiness, and I know that they do that for me too. I'll get the occasional like or the occasional message, and I think it was hard. It was like a full breakup at that time. And I've still got people from when I was very young, as well. But it was those that, were on the same journey of life as me. A lot of people that are in my circle now have actually experienced what I've experienced. I've even met people and watched them recently go through it at this very age, who came from a very similar background, a very similar upbringing, very ambitious, very successful, and just being with that one person for so long. And there's nothing against it, absolutely nothing against it. But if you know in yourself that there's something that's not quite right, gosh, waking up every morning and living that life, that for me is sad, So whilst I was sad, the breakup of, my marriage and the breakup of some of my friends, there was some other people waiting on the other side, and sometimes you have to make those hard decisions. I need to let them and I need to let me. And I'm saying that now because I've just finished Mel Robbins' let them theory. And, you are sometimes going to have to make really hard decisions, and it's not going to be okay with everybody, but if you're not okay, actually no one in the end is going to be okay. I like that theory of when you're on a plane and they say put your own mask on first before you put anyone else's mask on.
1000%. I feel like I bang on about that every episode.
Yeah. And it takes
so
time,
well, because we're not conditioned that way, particularly women.
Yes. Yeah. It's really hard to say no, and it's really hard to say yes to yourself. Really, really hard. But, slowly, every day, every year I get older, it's starting to get a little easier. Sometimes I can fall back into that pattern. But what I'm really good at now is when I'm feeling overwhelmed or, I'll get up and I'll go for a walk. I did it actually yesterday. There was a moment where I was feeling overwhelmed with all the work that I've got, all the things I need to do. And I've got a really great team. And I just said, and I rarely say it or do it. I just got up and I said, I'm offline for an hour. I just got to go for a little walk and clear my head. There was so much on my plate, big day today, International Women's Day at Barry's that I was planning for. I just finished a very big week of client strategy meetings. Next week, I'm, off to Adelaide for some other client activations. So there was just a lot on my plate. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do it all? But now self-soothing, and I do that with movement. I went for a walk. So that's kind of like my my vice. Yeah.
There's two things I really want to talk about. I'm trying to decide which one I want to go to first. Let's go to egg freezing, because this is something that you reached out to me about a little while ago. I can't remember the first time we spoke, probably about in 2022, the first time we spoke about it. And I know that having a baby is something that you really want to call in for your life. And at this stage in your life, you haven't met that person yet. And that is a deep desire, and I know it's going to happen for you. And one thing that I admire so much about you is that you have never given up on that, and you've never fallen into self-pity. You know, you're always so, not necessarily even positive. I don't necessarily think that's the right way to describe it, but you hold on to hope, which is such a beautiful thing to witness. If you feel comfortable, can you talk a little bit about that journey of egg freezing as a single woman and some of the fears that might come up for you around all of that?
I mean, yes, having a family, and to be honest, I probably had the zest for it more when I was so much younger. And when I say so much younger, I'm like in my teens, in my very early 20s. You know, I grew up around babies. I was like one of the oldest out of all the cousins. I always wanted to hold them. I always wanted to babysit them. And, you know, that maternal nurturing part of me is really authentic. It's in there. When I was, I guess, going through the self-discovery, I was like, oh, I don't know now, you know. But the more and more I think about it, it's still deeply rooted in me, and I do want to share life. I'm someone that wants to share life. So 2 years ago, I made the decision, actually after you made the decision. We even went through the same doctor. Everything was the same. Everything was the same. And it's such a weird feeling doing it on your own as well, because you're like, I'm planning for something. I don't even know if it's actually going to happen. I don't even know if it's going to be successful. I don't even know if I need it. I don't even know what to expect. And
it's a huge financial commitment.
Huge, you know. And I'm so grateful that I, you know, am able to. And I definitely recommend it to all women, even if you're not sure, because even sometimes doing it takes the pressure off. Even they could be there and you're like, you know what, actually it's a no. That maybe you needed to do that to know if it's a no. But just to have the possibilities and the options, and even if you choose, you know, to be generous with it one day, you know, and you want to offer life for somebody else, like, you know, whatever it is for you, it was a very big decision I made, and one I do wish I did a little earlier, but I'm glad I've done it. I'm a one and done round though. I don't know if I can do it again, to be honest.
Well, it is so much. I was having a conversation with a woman about this this morning, because she actually had a retrieval yesterday, and I said to her, did you know what you were in for? Like, did you understand? And she said, well, I've had a few rounds now, so I did know what to expect. But I remember for me thinking, this is so much harder than I had anticipated. I just thought I was going to inject myself for a couple of weeks. Yeah. You know, they said, that you get hormonal. I was like, yeah, I'll be fine. And I'd go in, have the procedure, and I'd be back fully fledged, work the next day and whatnot. That was not my experience. I think it took me 6 months before I felt like I was back in my body. Yeah. Emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of it. Yeah. What about for you?
Yeah, I think the injection, I don't like needles. Like, if I had to go and get blood tests, I'm like holding my arm up. And ladies like, put it down. I was like, okay, you know. So like, I'm a child like that a little bit. But the needles itself wasn't the big deal for me. I think that watching my body change in like such a quick, 2 weeks, like natural fluid retention, the mood's a little bit up and down, but it wasn't actually until after the retrieval that I felt, to be honest, my roller coaster. So retrieval was easy, injection was easy. Okay, feeling a little bit bloated, not so amazing, but it wasn't until I was coming down off it, and that's when it really hit me, and that, I know I wasn't alone, but I felt alone. Yeah. Because, sometimes they ask you, are you coming in with a partner? And that's quite triggering, because you're like, no, I'm not. Yeah. I'm coming in, just with me, myself and I. So yeah, the answer is like, I did think I knew what was going on, and I think you and I had lots of conversations, but I don't know, I think everyone's, experience is very different.
Yeah.
Some people found, what I just described to be the hardest part of their journey, whereas that for me was the easiest part. It was upon reflection of what I had just done and done it on my own. And also, like you said, it's such an investment, but that was an emotional thing for me too, because, I was able to do that. And I was like so thankful.
Well, you've worked so hard for so many years.
Yeah. And a lot of women don't, might not have that option, so that was also something that was, laying on me, that I felt a little bit of guilt, that I was like, okay, come on, get over yourself a little bit. Like, there are some people that are dying for this, and you've been able to do it. It's done and dusted now. So I actually, I can't quite put a timeline, but for a few months there, I was a little bit like, oh, my body bounced back very quickly. For anyone listening, like, that's the least of your worries, and your body's going to change so many times in your life. The body's such a beautiful thing. So look after it. It's more, I think, what it symbolizes, doing this, but it didn't stop me from believing that, children aside, I do believe my person is out there. I've always believed in it. I'm a true romantic.
Do you think it's a soulmate thing for you, or do you think it's you can meet a person and grow with them kind of thing?
Oh, I mean,
what did your gut? Because I know you got an answer just then in your gut.
I'm like half woo-woo, half like logical. Yeah. So I think 50-50, okay? Like I think, the way I'm dating these days is very different to, when I was dating post-marriage breakup, and learning about yourself and what is it that, you need, what are your needs? I don't think I ever explained my needs to any partner.
No.
Never.
Oh my gosh.
Never. And I
remember just thinking, please pick me.
Yeah.
It was never like I'm actually, it's like I get to choose here too. I never had that self-worth.
No. But also I've kind of grown up with the mentality of, I don't need a man, and like, great, cool. Actually, no, you do. Like,
well, it would be nice.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
When I say need, I'm like,
you're very self-sufficient.
I'm self-sufficient, but I have needs in those relationships, and getting vulnerable, those needs are like, and I'm leaning more into my femininity here, that yes, I need a words of affirmation, okay? Like, and I didn't think that I did, but I do, I do need that. Even though, I'm like this boss lady on the outside, and yes, I am, and I'm not shying away from that, but, a cuddle, I do need that.
Physical touch. It's important.
It's important, and I need to feel needed, and I didn't know that, I'm such a nurturer, and like I want to know like that I can do something for that person. Maybe that's why fitness also has come into play, because I see these clients every single day. They're like family to me now, and I can feel different energies sometimes, okay, maybe a bit off this week, a bit high this week, whatever it is. I just love seeing them though completely transform after that class, and I'm like, I'm so happy that I've made an impact on that person. But that's actually a need for me to be able to do that, and I didn't realize. So for me personally, I like being, I need that words of affirmation, but I need to be able to give to a person.
Yeah, you have a lot of love to give.
Yeah, I have to give, to feel connected. And it's not really tangibly, it's just, I don't know, on the emotional side, on the nurturing side, on the maternal side. And when I say maternal, it's not always, around children. Maternal can mean so many different things, Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. That was beautifully explained. Okay, the question I want to ask you next is actually around social media. Because you mentioned before, you're like, I see my friends getting married and having babies and I feel so good for them. And my head went, bullshit. I say that with love.
Yeah.
Because I could be totally wrong here, but I know that when there's been areas in my life where I have really wanted something and I haven't had it at a point in time, I have found it very triggering to see it constantly on my social media. When I was trying for a baby with my ex-husband, people having babies set me off. You know, it's been different things over different periods of my life. So I want the real, raw, honest answer if you're happy to give it. Have you had to put in any boundaries around your social media consumption, conversations? Like, what does that look like for you?
Anything that triggers me, you know, I can mute it for a little bit, you know, and that really helps me move on.
Yeah.
You know, I also know that not everything you see on social media is the truth.
Amen.
You know, I have a really beautiful relationship with social media. So, you know, I have my fitness with Niki Kiss, and it's purely my love and desire for fitness. That is the most perfect relationship I have in my life. And everything you see on that page is legitimately pure joy. And I've been, you know, people will say, like, we can see it.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
radiates.
It radiates. You know, I have my personal account, which I haven't posted on, I reckon, since my divorce.
Wow.
And I've just left it there, to be honest. And it's a private account that only my very close friends and family have. But again, haven't actually, it's been dormant for so long, and I don't think I'll be using it. My relationship with social media is I want to share the authentic happiness, you know. When it comes to sharing authentically, you know, the challenges I have in my life, I mean, this is clearly a step one, you know, so I'm not shying away from it. I do want my platform to be, you know, maybe someone's not feeling so great, but then they jump on Fitness with Niki Kiss and they might have a laugh or they might smile or see a photo.
Aspirational.
Correct. So that's not to say that because you only see happy things that I don't go through up and down moments. I also can tell the difference now because I used to be one of them when I did used to post something inauthentic. You know, maybe it was one of the, you know, partners that I did have post my marriage, you know, because I've had at least 2 long-term, you know, longish term relationships post that in those 8 years, and, you know, seeking that validation externally on my relationship. So it's very easy for me now to kind of see it, you know, on the outside.
I had totally forgotten about those 2 relationships until you just mentioned them just then. And I was like, oh, wow, yes. I mean, do we even have time to go there? Can you just tell me, I mean, that last one was pretty crazy, what happened at the end, and we don't have to go into the major details around it. But, I mean, how did you bounce back from that? Because, I mean, we were talking about you moving countries at one stage and, like, it was really on. And then he turned out it was not on. And, like, how did you recover from that? Because that would have been, again, at the time of your life.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing was my ambition took over. So I'm like, I'm going over there regardless. You know, I was interviewing internationally with or without him. So that kind of has been my saving grace. But it wasn't until I hit the egg freezing, I guess, you know, topic that it made me think, you know what, I think you've been interviewing for 9 months. You're probably close, but is it going to be a role that's going to be game changing to what you're building here in Australia? So I made the call and thought, you know, maybe if I was 10 years younger, great. But I don't know. I think what I've been building here and the solid foundation kind of helped me, you know, put that to bed for now. Who knows, you know, like with my future partner, like he might be someone that wants to do that, and that's an option. But I just didn't want to do it alone, to be honest. Either. I really wanted, I'm at a time in my life where I want to share. Like I've had 8 years of enjoying getting to know Nikki and doing life with, you know, me, myself and I. And it's been wild and fun and I've loved it. But now I'm ready to, you know, like do this in partnership with my partner in crime. And I've been so lucky, honest to God. I've had great partners, great relationships. They're great men. Sometimes people don't know what to do and they just don't want to hurt you, you know. And even me, like I didn't want to hurt my husband. I didn't want to hurt any of the relationships that I'd walked away from, you know. So I really look back on them and say, like, thank you for teaching me. Was I distraught at the time? Fucking absolutely. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast.
You can swear as much as you want.
But like, you know, like I've really made peace. But it took me a little bit of time, maybe quicker with him because I'd been like, you know, 5 years into my journey, and now I'm like 3 years on from that. And, you know, and I had the previous relationship as well that, you know, they were both a year each. Great men off doing great things, you know. And I think when you can look back on, you know, even like with my friends, like I said to you before, there's so much peace and love with that. You know, and if I saw any one of my, you know, exes or, you know, childhood friends in the street, like I would embrace them, you know, and wish them well. Do I want to open doors and things like that? No, I don't.
No, yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with, you know, wishing the best for people, but honestly wishing the best for people.
Yeah, it's genuine. And it just also sounds like you've got a really healthy boundary there.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to be friends with our exes. I used to always think that that was something that, you know, it was a reflection on myself and them. And now I just realize, like, if you are, you are. And if you're not, that's okay as well. And you don't need to force that.
No.
If they treated you like a piece of shit, maybe it's best that
Yeah.
that door is closed for good.
Yes.
You mentioned before when we were talking about the social media that you do have this really beautiful, joyful account, and I love following you. But then you also said that that's not to say that there aren't dark times. And I'm just wondering if maybe we can touch on that a little bit more. You know, for people listening along today, what wouldn't they know about you? Like from the surface looking in, like what don't we see about Nikki?
It's a really good question, because I think there are close friends that I would open up to if I'm having a moment. Sometimes it is hard to continue being positive and having hope for finding my person. And, you know, for example, I remember about a year ago, a very good friend of mine messaged me with a picture of her scan. And she mentioned she's pregnant with her husband. I was so overjoyed that as soon as I sent that message off and I closed it, I was laying in bed and I was watching a chick flick. I can't remember what I was watching. But this like wave of emotion just came up, and I'm like, I don't really, like, it just came out of nowhere, like a tornado. And normally I sit in that, but I just needed to call someone. And before I did, actually, my dad called me and I answered, and I was like sobbing on the phone, and all he said was, he's like, I know. I know. And he's like, it's hard. You know, like, let it out. Like, you never let the cry out, Nikki. You just hold it in, you know? And I was like, yeah, okay, because there's nothing I can say that's going to make you feel better right now. Like, actually feel it, sit in it. And then after that, I'd called another girlfriend, actually, after I'd spoken to Dad. Because, okay, you've spoken to Dad, but then you need the girlfriend, you know?
Absolutely.
And she just said, your dad's spot on. Feel it. You know, and then I spoke to my mum the next day, and she said, this is the best advice, is really sit in it, feel it, like understand what's coming up for you, and then, you know, like journal about it, write about it, you know, bring it up with your life coach, you know, or your therapist or your next girlfriend, whatever it is. But sometimes, to be really honest with you, it doesn't really give me much notice, these feelings.
Yeah.
They just kind of come up, and I'm grateful though that they're coming up sometimes behind the closed doors.
Why?
Because it's a big cry. It's like ugly cry. It's like, it's not like a nice cry, you know, it's a pain cry.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's happened in the shower, sometimes it's happened in bed, or, you know, I don't want it to happen, you know, when I'm at work. And if it did, I'd like run into the bathroom.
Nikki, it sounds to me like grief.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think still grieving certain areas of my life. And I think there's the grief of, yes, it happened to me, but there's the grief of, I know it hurt someone, you know, me walking away from something that person at the time, I mean, I'm sure they probably look on it now and think, okay, yep, you know, they've moved on with life, and you know, it's happened for the best. But, you know, like, I can honestly say I'm a good person, and I have good people around me, and everyone that I've, you know, whether, you know, we've had a friendship breakup or relationship breakup, they've been good people too. And that's where I believe, like, you do attract, you know, like, but it doesn't mean that, you know, because some things don't work sometimes, that person's a bad person. You know, people sometimes do the best that they know how. You know, like my parents, they did the best they knew how. coming to this country, like my mum was 6, dad was born here. My grandparents came when, they were 18 years old, didn't speak any English, not a lot of money, built a life, you'll hear this story, $10 in my pocket and, I made this life for you. And, like it's hard. And they were brought up with different values. So everybody's doing what they've been taught to do best at that time. So I've got a lot of empathy now, but I didn't before. I think I was very bitter before, a bit angry before, but I've really healed that childhood wound, and I'm still going. Like, it's anyone who says, oh, no, like I'm done. No.
I'm fixed.
There's no growing and building and developing yourself is a life practice.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
If God willing, I always say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. It's a lot. It's a lot to digest and to reflect on, and I'm just so grateful that you've been so vulnerable with me here today. Nikki, there's one final question that I love to ask all of my guests, and that question is, what are your 3 non-negotiables that allow you to live your life today happy, authentic, and free?
Or movement.
Movement, yes, number 1.
My 3 non-negotiables. Look, if it doesn't scare me, what's the point?
I love that.
What's the point? Because I see Nikki, she's going to be 100, maybe plus. And I see her telling everyone around her about these wild adventures and laughing about how scared I was and how wild that experience was. So, yeah, if it doesn't scare you, and my other non-negotiables, never stop investing in yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, whatever it is for you, whether it's therapy, travel, it's
a life coach, like you said.
Just that's the one selfish thing I'll say every single person can do is put yourself first and never stop throwing money or time into yourself, into bettering yourself, and I will lead by example for the rest of my life on that. And I think it's one legacy I have where I work. And at the start, it was a bit like, oh, I don't know if this is going to fit in. And now it's, sometimes I've hosted the whole company at Barry's. I used to teach dance fitness on level 6 in the building. I'll never stop doing that. So I think, be the change you want to see.
It's one of the many, many reasons I love you, Miss Niki Kiss.
Yes.
Now, if people want to find more about you, if they want to follow your account or get to a Barry's class, where should they go?
At fitness _with_Niki_Kiss. It's just 1 S. And I'm at Barry's Bootcamp in South Yarra at the Como. Come see me. I'm teaching about 5 classes a week, mostly in the morning. Schedules up on our website.
Amazing. I'll make sure I put that information in the episode show notes. Nikki, we say here on Behind the Smile that when we recover loudly, no one needs suffer in silence. So thank you so, so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me and holding space. Thank you. Love you.
A big thank you for tuning in today. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by hitting the follow button and leaving a rating and review. Each rating and review helps this podcast become more discoverable so more people can hear these stories of strength and hope. Remember to reach out to those you care about, and I'll be back next week. Until then.